So unless you've been living in a hole for the past decade, I don't know, when did this news break this movie was being made? 2 years ago?
Where have you been for the last 10 years? A hole?
For those of us
inside a hole?
I guess it was pretty dismissive of me.
Yeah.
For those of us not living in a hole, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This is the first of the anthology films which aren't connected to the main saga, but sort of, little spin-offs. And this one is all about stealing the Death Star plans, which they give to Princess Leia, which kickstarts the whole bloody franchise in A New Hope. So this is directed by Gareth Edwards, we think, though there were rumours, well, not rumours, there was documented facts that a lot of reshoots went on with the help of Tony Gilroy, but we don't know what he's been attributed to. He got paid so much money.
We don't know where he's been.
He got paid $5 million, so I don't think he gets a credit. They bought the credit off him.
Yeah.
So the film starts with baddies visiting Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen. He is a sort of Star Wars equivalent of sort of Joshua Oppenheimer, military scientist genius who was building the Death Star, but then had a crisis of confidence or crisis of conscience, I should say.
Conscience, yes.
And left. And at the beginning, they take him away, and his little daughter runs off to be raised by Forrest Whitaker. She grows up to be Felicity Jones, playing Jyn Erso, and then she joins up with a ragtag band of the Rebel Alliance to steal the Death Star plans.
Yeah.
And stuff happens in between that. There's a movie with a lot of plot. A lot of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And here's a clip of Jyn Erso boarding a ship with K2SO, a sarcastic robot, and Cassian, who is played by Diego Luna, a sexy Spanish rebel captain, and she wants a gun and he doesn't want her to have the gun.
Why does she get a blaster and I don't?
What?
I know how to use it.
That's what I'm afraid of. Give it to me.
We're going to Jeddah. That's a war zone.
That's not the point of... Where'd you get it?
I found it.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.
Brilliant dialogue.
No gun for you.
No gun for you.
Jyn
Erso, you cannot have the gun.
Why? I want one.
You cannot have the gun.
I rebel.
Against...
That's not a good Felicity Jones impression, to be honest.
So, I find the Star Wars movies a bit strange these days.
They are strange.
Because...
They are strange, Danny.
They're odd because, on one hand, it's made by people with a genuine and sincere love for these films, and you can feel that, but at the same time, it's completely a commercial entity where the money men are in charge of any major decisions.
Yeah.
And it's also both a prequel to and a sort of remake of A New Hope. So it's sort of like this weird nowhere movie. The only reason it exists is to make money, but the people who make it are very genuine in their ambitions.
They're just greedy fanboys.
So I'm not sure if it ever escapes just being the most expensive piece of fan fiction ever.
Yeah.
But I sort of enjoyed it for what it was, would be my general take of it. It kind of reminds me a bit of the Hobbit movies, which I don't think are particularly good. They have good bits in it, but I just quite enjoy being in the world of that franchise.
Yeah. I think that it had a few things going for it, Rogue One. I think that it would seem better if Force Awakens had distanced itself a little more from the original trilogy. There's something a bit weird about bringing out this movie that's the 7th episode, which is kind of a remake of the 4th episode, and is constantly calling back to it and trying to evoke the feelings from the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then a movie which is set 5 minutes before the first Star Wars, so there's much more direct, just the things that are in that movie are in this movie.
Yeah, it's got more of a license to have the sort of fan servicey elements.
Yeah, so the fan service elements built into the plot, but it's still, you feel there's still some repetition purely because you had the that kind of reboot remake style fan service just last year. And obviously this has the real Death Star in it, but last year we had the Death Planet, whatever it's called. And there's a lot of things like that. And it also has the Star Wars sort of archetype characters that you've always just got to include, the sort of eccentric mentor and the plucky orphan and the brave pilot, and so it definitely, it's a film that feels a bit unnecessary. It never feels like it has to exist, but there are things that I like about it. I think the thing that I like the best about the movie is the aesthetics of it, which are successful in several ways. they do a really, really good job, I think, of melding a modern, grandiose, mega blockbuster look with the aesthetics of 1970s Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think that's really effectively done, because it could seem sort of, you don't want it to look like the most expensive episode of Red Dwarf ever or something, you know?
Yeah.
With like all these weird old haircuts that, you know, and stuff. And like the characters do have these sort of 70s dues, a lot of them, and a lot of Rebel Alliance people and stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of works, and a lot of the CGI aliens look a bit rubbery. Like they do the CGI to look kind of like rubber.
Yeah.
So it molds in with the look of the older movies, and when they sort of steal the data for the Death Star or whatever, it's on this big blocky tape.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
No Wi-Fi, and it was a long time ago.
No USB.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they only made those like 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
This is happened way longer than that in the past.
Yeah.
So I think the look of it was really good, and it was also the quality of the effects is really spectacular, and the photography is brilliant, and the way that they do the scale of space things.
Yeah, I think Gareth Edwards that's his real strength.
That's his thing.
And I think he's much better. I find J.J. Abrams directing like a little televisual at times.
Yeah,
but
it's
like
very cinematic.
He can really shoot scale in a way,
yeah,
which is
absolutely
very impressive.
Like there's several shots in it that I was genuinely really like blown away by. And it helped that we saw it in IMAX. And I really recommend, this is a perfect movie to see in that kind of format, because you're squeezing all the juice out of the movie's best feature.
I think the cast are very good. Like Ben Mendelsohn is brilliant in it.
He's the best thing in it.
He really judges his performance well between slightly hammy. You know, there's a certain tone you got to pitch it, right? And he kind of nails it, which is kind of doubly impressive.
He's the bad guy,
because the movies have gone through all these reshoots, and you feel that some people's characters have drastically changed.
Yeah.
And Riz Ahmed continues to be the best thing in everything he's in.
Yeah, he's really
just great. I think Felicity Jones's character has been heavily messed with by these reshoots, because she's supposed to be the sort of jaded orphan who is a bit grim and nihilistic, but she only talks about hope for the entire movie.
Yeah.
Not just at the end of the film, but at the beginning. So she's like, where did she get all this optimism from? I thought she hated life and stuff. But
her character arc doesn't really make sense now or exist.
Yeah, I think her character is perhaps indicative of the biggest problem with the movie, is that it's all plot and no real story. It's not really about anything.
You can see
it's like
what
she was supposed to be about
yeah.
her finding hope. Like that's the arc and her character. I don't know. Like,
yeah. Like that was the idea. I feel like there was two themes in it that maybe like in the original cut of the movie. This is highly speculative.
Yeah.
But I feel like the movie had two thematic things going on that are kind of at odds. And one of them is this story about hope fueling people's, it's like that sort of swashbuckling adventure. You have no chance. It's like a 1 in a million shot, but you're going to do it anyway. You know? And that journey from being jaded to signing up for a cause and being willing to die for it. And at the same time, the movie is kind of about the moral grey areas and the like ethical swamp that you get into in war.
Sort of ends justify the means.
The ends justify the means attitude, and how the rebels are so desperate that they will do nasty things, and like the ethical questions that arise from that, which don't really come up. And there's one moment in particular where that's massively confused, at least in this edit of the movie, where there's this big event that to motivate her character, which could simultaneously motivate her in two opposite directions. And she goes, one way, but you're thinking back on it later and you're like, but she could have just as easily taken the exact opposite lesson from that. And it's very...
Yeah.
In the end, it's a bit of a hodgepodge that doesn't quite like successfully drive any of those two messages home. I mean, there's like this message of self-sacrifice or whatever, and like embracing the cause and hope giving your life meaning and stuff, but like I don't know, it didn't really land.
Well, I think the problem is, because you know how it's going to end, for the story to work you have to be engaged in the actual individual characters, because you don't know what will happen to them. That's the sort of the edge this movie has, is like, oh, you don't know if these characters will live or die or not.
Yeah.
And so you have to really be invested whether they live or die or not.
Yeah.
But I don't think it ever really emotionally engages you, but it's so sort of whiz bang, and like there's a plan every 5 minutes and explosions that it sort of doesn't really matter. Like I was thoroughly entertained throughout, but then I felt like I could, we kind of had a drink afterwards, and then we were like, what was the scene with that? What was that about? And there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and you don't know how much to attribute to these reshoots and how much was just like a flaw in the design of the movie.
Yeah.
Do you prefer it to Force Awakens? I think that's going to be the big sort of, decision fans make.
When I came out, I was thinking that I liked it better, but I don't know. I think Force Awakens is a film that was characterized by a bit of the shine wearing off, where people came out and they're like, "Whoa, I loved it so much! It was amazing! It was better than Empire, or whatever." And then like a few weeks later, people started to reevaluate and like, actually, was there that much going on? Like you feel like you've been sold, you've been deceived a little bit. You're like, it was all just whoops and bangs, and it's actually there's nothing there under the surface. So I don't know if there's a similar like effect with this movie. But there are things about it that I like better than Force Awakens.
I prefer it. I think it's genuinely, it had like an epicness to it that Force Awakens lacked.
That's true, yeah. It's more epic.
I think, as you said with Force Awakens, there's almost like a limit to how good these films can be, because they've got all these things they have to tick off. And even if it's a piece of fan fiction, it's a very spectacularly mounted one. And given all the rumors about all these reshoots and stuff, it's actually pretty coherent.
Yeah, so, it is. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking Suicide Squad levels of disastrousness by any means.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel you can feel the heartfelt nature in which it was made.
Yeah.
Even throughout, the sort of Hollywood machine of cynicism and capitalism, it has succeeded. Ish.
Good.
I give it 3.5 Star Wars out of 5 Star Wars.
Me too. I give it 3.75 Star. Wait, yeah, whatever.
My favorite film stars Bridget Bardot. She's the queen, but she wants to be in radio. So she starts a podcast with her friends, and the terrorists try to stop her, but she beats them in the end.